clock on the north wing wall reads 2:14 p.m. Not 2:13, not 2:15, 2:14 p.m. The exact minute Prince William decides that 20 years of silence is enough. The corridor is cold. The kind of cold that has nothing to do with temperature. It seeps through the stone walls, through the portraits of kings and queens who never once flinched, through the heavy oak doors that have absorbed centuries of secrets. William stands at the entrance to the north wing, and he does not move. He does not blink. His jaw is set like concrete, and his blue eyes carry something that has no name in polite conversation. Hi viewers, if you were standing in that corridor right now, watching the future King of England make the hardest decision of his life, would you stop him, or would you let him finish what his mother started? Every person who leaves this video without subscribing is essentially handing the keys of the palace back to the very people who broke it. If you're one of those who won't join us, please go to the comments and explain why you're choosing to stay silent while the truth is being locked away forever. Tom Parker Bowles is already inside. That is the first problem. The second problem is what he is doing inside. The room, designated strictly for state-level affairs, sealed under royal protocol, accessible only to those carrying blood clearance, smells of truffle oil and aged burgundy. White linen tables stretch across the floor. Crystal glasses catch the afternoon light. Waitstaff in pressed black uniforms move between guests who have no business breathing this particular palace air. Tom stands at the center of it all, laughing, loud, comfortable, like a man who has never once been told no. William watches from the doorway for exactly 4 seconds. Then he steps inside. The room does not go quiet all at once. It drains, the way sound drains from a space when something heavier than noise enters. One by one, heads turn. Glasses stop midway to lips. A server named Darnell freezes near the far wall, a tray balanced on his palm, his eyes tracking the prince with the careful attention of someone who has witnessed enough palace history to know when a moment is about to become permanent. William crosses the room without hurrying. That is the terrifying part. There is no rage in his stride, no trembling. He moves the way a verdict moves. Steady, inevitable, already decided before the first word is spoken. Tom turns. His expression opens, wide eyes, dropped jaw, the specific look of a man whose confidence has just discovered a wall. William places a document on the nearest table. It lands without drama. A single red wax seal holds it closed, stamped with an insignia that Tom recognizes immediately, because there is only one document in the entire palace system that carries that seal. The succession alteration. Tom's mouth opens. William speaks first. 5 words. Your security clearance ends now. The glasses stop catching light. The truffle oil smell suddenly feels offensive. Darnell lowers the tray, slowly, carefully, and every person in that room understands, without being told, that they are witnessing something that will be whispered about in palace corridors for the next 50 years. Tom does not respond immediately. His chest rises. His fingers find the edge of the nearest table, and he grips it. Not for balance, but for something to hold onto while his entire understanding of his place in this world begins to shift beneath him. But what no one in that room knows, what even Tom does not yet know, is that the document on the table is not the beginning of this moment. It is the end of a process that William began in silence, alone, 18 months ago. And the first page of that document contains a name that will stop Tom's heart cold when he finally reads it. The succession alteration does not land like a surprise inside the palace's inner chambers. It lands like a confirmation, 3 floors above the north wing, in a wood-paneled office that smells of old leather and older decisions. A senior aide named Reginald Okafor sets down his pen and exhales for the first time in 6 hours. He has been waiting for this moment with the specific tension of a man who drafted the paperwork himself and then had to pretend, for 18 months, that it did not exist. Reginald picks up his phone. He does not dial out. He simply checks the time, 2:17 p.m., and places it face down on the desk. It is done. What the public does not understand, what even the most seasoned royal correspondents have failed to grasp, is that this eviction is not a family argument dressed in formal language. The succession alteration is not a letter of complaint. It is the activation of a legal framework so rarely used that most palace staff have only ever read about it in internal historical documents. The Royal Succession Stabilization Act, drafted originally in 1917, revised twice, never once activated in the modern era. Until today, the Act exists for one specific purpose: to protect the integrity of the bloodline during periods of royal vulnerability. And the word vulnerability is doing enormous work right now because King Charles is not well. The details stay locked behind palace walls, behind careful press statements, behind the particular skill the royal family has always had for presenting composure while the foundation shakes. But inside those walls, the people who matter know the truth. The king's health is wavering. And when a king wavers, every person who has been quietly collecting proximity to the crown suddenly becomes a structural risk. William understood this before anyone said it aloud. He watched it happen. He watched the geography of the palace shift. Slowly, incrementally, the way a river changes course not in a single flood but in 1,000 small redirections. Tom Parker Bowles had not stormed the gates. He had simply walked through doors that were left open, taken seats that were not explicitly assigned, and built a presence so gradual that by the time anyone thought to question it, it already felt established. That is the oldest strategy in the palace playbook. And William, who learned to read rooms before he learned to read books, had been tracking every single step. Reginald pulls open the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside, sealed in a gray envelope with no identifying marks, is a document that does not appear in any official registry. It does not have a formal title. Palace staff who know of its existence refer to it only as the gray file. 47 incidents. 18 months. Every overreach documented. Every boundary crossed, measured, and recorded with the cold precision of an institution that never forgets and never acts without evidence. Tom Parker Bowles had not just been living on borrowed grace. He had been building a case against himself, one small transgression at a time. And somewhere inside that gray file, on page 11, between a documented access violation and a record of unauthorized guest entry, is a reference to a letter. A letter written in 1996, in Diana's handwriting. She wrote it on a Tuesday. That detail matters because Diana rarely wrote letters on Tuesdays. Tuesdays were for engagements, for public appearances, for the performance of a life she had long stopped believing in. But this particular Tuesday in the autumn of 1996, she sat alone in her private study at Kensington Palace, the same study where William now signs his most consequential documents, and she wrote 4 pages by hand. She addressed it to no one specific. That also matters. The letter was not a complaint. It was not a legal declaration. It was something closer to a prophecy. The kind that only makes sense in retrospect, when every word she wrote has already come true and the people she wrote about are standing exactly where she said they would stand. A former staffer named Celestine Abra kept that letter for 23 years before she handed it, without ceremony, to William's private secretary in the spring of 2019. Celestine had been Diana's personal aide for the last 2 years of her life. She never spoke to the press. She never wrote a book. She simply held the letter and waited for the right moment with the patience of someone who understood that some truths need time to become undeniable. When William finally read it, he read it 3 times. The first time standing. The second time sitting. The third time, he folded it carefully along its original crease lines and held it closed between both hands for a long moment before placing it inside the gray file. He never told anyone what it said. But Reginald Okafor, who prepared the file and has seen every document inside it, describes William's expression after reading that letter as the face of a man who has just watched a door open that he always suspected was there but had never been sure was real. The Parker Bowles children had entered royal life through their mother's relationship with Charles. That part was publicly understood, publicly accepted, publicly moved past. The formal wedding in 2005 made Camilla the queen consort and extended a version of palace belonging to her family by association. What was not publicly understood was the speed at which that association became assumption. Tom did not ask for access to palace resources. He simply began using them. An office here, a kitchen facility there, state-grade event spaces repurposed for private culinary ventures. Each individual instance small enough to dismiss. Each instance, collectively, forming a pattern that only becomes visible when you step back far enough to see the whole picture. William had been stepping back and looking at the whole picture since 2005. He was 22 years old at his father's wedding. Old enough to understand what the ceremony meant. Old enough to stand still and keep his face composed through every moment of it. Old enough to watch Tom Parker Bowles move through the reception with the easy confidence of someone who had already decided how this story ended. A staffer who worked the 2005 event, a quiet, observant man named Solomon Ease, later told a colleague that William's face that day was the face of someone storing information rather than experiencing emotion. He wasn't grieving, Solomon said. He was remembering. And now, 21 years later, the memory has become a document. The document has become law. But what nobody outside that inner circle knows yet, what Tom himself does not know as he stands in the north wing with William's 5 words still hanging in the air between them, is that Diana's 1996 letter contains one specific paragraph that predicts, almost word for word, the exact scenario playing out in that room today. She wrote it like a warning. William is reading it like a mandate. It did not start with a confrontation. It started with a calendar entry. 14 months before William places the succession alteration on the table, a palace scheduling coordinator named Imani Osei flags an anomaly in the North Wing booking system. A recurring private reservation every third Thursday, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., entered under a guest access code that should have expired 18 months prior. The reservation notes list it as a culinary consultation. The room listed is Suite 14 North. Suite 14 North is not a kitchen. It is not a conference room. It is not a guest lounge. Suite 14 North is a state-designated space, used twice a year for classified diplomatic briefings, cleared by security protocol before and after every single use. Imani flags the entry, routes it to her supervisor, and assumes the matter will be corrected quietly. Standard administrative error. The kind of thing that happens in large institutions and gets resolved with a 2-line email. Instead, 3 days pass and the entry remains. She flags it again. 5 days after that, her supervisor, a cautious, career-conscious man named Broderick Mensah, walks into her office, closes the door, and tells her, with the measured calm of someone choosing their words very carefully, to remove the flag and leave the entry as it is. Imani removes the flag. She does not leave it alone. What she does instead is begin keeping her own log. Personal. Offline. Handwritten in a small blue notebook she keeps in her coat pocket. Every third Thursday, she notes the arrival time of Tom's associates, the vehicles they arrive in, the gates they use to enter. The gates are the critical detail because the entrance being used is Gate 7, the north approach, reserved exclusively for blood royals and their direct security detail. Gate 7 had never, in its documented history, been used for a culinary consultation. By the 3rd month of her personal log, Imani has documented 11 separate incidents. By the 5th month, the log includes photographs, taken on her personal phone, during what she formally documents as routine site checks, of high-profile individuals entering palace grounds through Gate 7 carrying equipment that has no legitimate state function. Catering crates, wine cases, audio equipment, for a room designated as a classified briefing space. On the fourth Thursday of the sixth month, Imani places her blue notebook inside a sealed envelope addressed to a name she found through careful, indirect research, a name connected to William's private office, not through the official palace directory, but through a source Imani trusts completely. The envelope reaches its destination within 48 hours. William reads the notebook in one sitting, but the notebook is only the first layer. Because 2 weeks after Imani's log reaches William's desk, a separate and entirely unconnected report arrives from Palace Financial Oversight. A dense, technical document prepared by an analyst named Kwame Asante that has been sitting in a review queue for 4 months, flagged as low-priority administrative review. Kwame calls it the Chopard file. It is not low priority. The Chopard file documents a series of financial arrangements in which the Parker Bowles name appears as an authorizing reference on procurement orders for goods and services that were billed, not to Tom's private accounts, but to a palace administrative budget line designated for royal household operational expenses. In plain language, someone had been using the royal family's institutional credibility to underwrite a private business operation. The amounts are not enormous. That is precisely the point. They are small enough, spread across enough budget lines, across enough months, to never individually trigger an audit flag. Collectively, they tell a story. And the story ends with Tom Parker Bowles hosting a private tasting event, with high-profile associates, with wine he did not pay for, with staff who were redirected from their palace duties without authorization, in a room that exists by law exclusively in service of the crown. William closes the Chopard file. He picks up his pen. He writes one line at the top of a fresh legal notepad. But before the ink is even dry, his phone buzzes with a message from Palace Security that stops everything. Tom had hosted a second event, one that William knew nothing about. And this one had happened without any clearance at all. The advisor's name is Constance Boateng. She has worked in the palace for 19 years. She has survived 4 chiefs of staff, 2 major royal scandals, and 1 complete restructuring of the communications department. She is not easily rattled. She does not raise her voice. She keeps a small framed quote on her desk, attributed to no one in particular, that reads, "The quietest person in the room is usually the one taking notes." On a Wednesday morning in February, Tom Parker Bowles calls Constance directly on her office line. He does not schedule the call. He does not go through her assistant. He simply dials the number, a number that is not publicly listed and should not, by any reasonable measure, be in his personal contacts. And when she picks up, he speaks before she can offer a greeting. "I need you to handle the Imani situation." Constance does not respond immediately. She sets down her coffee cup. Slowly, she picks up a pen. "I'm not sure I know what situation you mean," she says. "Yes, you do," Tom says. His voice carries the particular texture of a man who has never had a door closed in his face. "She's been creating complications. I need it managed quietly. The king is my stepfather. You answer to me." There is a pause. Not a long one. 2 seconds, perhaps 3. And in those 3 seconds, Constance Boateng makes a decision that 19 years of palace service have prepared her for without her ever knowing it. She does not argue. She does not challenge the claim. She does not remind Tom that his stepfather's title does not transfer institutional authority to adult stepchildren. She does not point out that her position reports through a chain of command that does not include him at any level. She does none of the things a rattled person would do. She simply reaches across her desk with her right hand and presses a small gray button on the side panel of her desktop telephone. A button that activates the line's internal recording function, standard on all senior advisor phones since 2019, used primarily for compliance documentation and meeting records. The button makes no sound. Tom keeps talking. He talks for 11 more minutes. He references Imani by name twice more. He mentions the North Wing bookings. He makes a passing reference to the file situation in terms specific enough to indicate he knows the Chopard file exists. He uses the phrase "you answer to me" 2 more times, with increasing confidence, as though repetition will make it more true. Constance takes notes throughout. Her handwriting is small and precise. She asks 3 questions, each one mild, each one seemingly administrative, that cause Tom to elaborate in directions she guides him toward with the subtle skill of someone who has been conducting conversations like this her entire career. When the call ends, Constance sits for a moment. Then she picks up her phone again, a different phone, the secure internal line, and dials a 4-digit extension that connects directly to William's private office. The call lasts 40 seconds. She says only, "You'll want to hear the Wednesday recording." William's response is a single word. "When?" "Now," she says. William is in Constance's office within 8 minutes. He sits across from her desk. She plays the recording from the beginning. He listens without moving, without expression, without once looking away from the middle distance he has fixed his gaze on since the first sentence of Tom's voice fills the room. When the recording ends, William does not speak for a long moment. Then he stands. He straightens his jacket with the automatic precision of a man trained since childhood to present composure as architecture. "Get Reginald," he says quietly. "He's already in the building," Constance replies. William pauses at the doorway. "And get me the gray file." He walks out, and Tom Parker bowls, still entirely unaware of the recording, still entirely unaware of Imani's notebook, still entirely unaware that every move he has made in the last 18 months has been documented, cross-referenced, and compiled into a legal framework that now bears a royal seal. Spends that same Wednesday afternoon calling 3 separate associates to discuss an upcoming event he is planning for the following month. In Suite 14 North, he has already ordered the wine. The locksmiths arrive at 4:47 a.m. Not 5, not 6. For 47, that specific window between the last security rotation and the first kitchen staff arrival, when the palace grounds hold their breath and the only sound is gravel shifting under careful feet. There are 3 of them. A senior technician named Darius Calloway leads the team. He carries a black canvas roll of precision tools that he sets down on the stone step outside the North Wing's secondary entrance without a word. His 2 assistants, young, quiet, trained to work fast, position themselves on either side of the door frame and wait for his signal. Darius does not rush. He examines each lock with a small torch, running his thumb along the barrel housing with the focused attention of a surgeon assessing an incision point. He has changed locks in some of the most secured buildings in the country. He has never once been asked to explain why. That is the nature of the work. You arrive. You change the hardware. You leave before the building wakes up. This morning feels different. Not because of the hour. Not because of the location. But because of the envelope Darius received 2 days ago, hand-delivered by a palace courier, sealed with a specific internal code that told him, without a single explanatory word, that whatever he was changing these locks for would not appear in any public record. He opens the first barrel at 4:51 a.m. 3 floors above him, the lights in William's private study are already on. They have been on since 3 a.m. William sits at his mother's old desk, the same dark walnut surface she used for her private correspondence. The same chair she pulled close on late evenings when the palace felt too large and too loud and too full of people who did not see her. The desk has been in this study since 1989. William had it moved here in 2022 and said nothing about the decision to anyone. He does not need to explain it. On the desk in front of him sits the complete gray file, every page open, every tab flagged in the sequence Reginald Okafor prepared. Beside it, a single sheet of palace letterhead bearing the succession alteration order. Beside that, Diana's folded letter, 4 pages, Autumn 1996. Celestine Abra's handwriting on the outside of the envelope. For when it is time. William picks up the fountain pen. It is old. Heavy. The barrel is dark green with a gold nib, and the engraving on the clip reads a single initial G, for King George VI, who used this pen to sign documents during some of the most consequential years in British history. William's grandmother gave it to him privately in 2017, wrapped in a piece of blue velvet with no card attached. He understood what it meant without a card. He signs the succession alteration at 3:14 a.m. Then he sets the pen down. He does not close the file. He does not stand up. He simply sits in the quiet of his mother's study, in the chair she sat in, at the desk she chose, and lets the weight of what he has just done settle over the room like the last note of a hymn. Below him, Darius Calloway finishes the first lock and moves to the second. By the time the palace kitchen staff begin arriving at 6 a.m., all 4 north wing entrance points carry new barrels. The old keys, every single one issued over the last 7 years, including the 2 that were registered under a guest access code linked to Tom Parker Bowles, are now useless pieces of metal. The palace does not issue a statement. It does not need to. But at 6:23 a.m., a message is sent from William's office to a single recipient, a number that connects directly to Tom's personal phone. The message contains 4 words: "Come to the palace." Tom reads it at 7:02 a.m. He stares at it for a long moment. He types back one word, "When?" and the reply arrives in under a minute. Now, Tom does not know about the locksmiths. He does not know about the recording. He does not know that Reginald Okafor spent the previous evening cross-referencing the Chopard file against palace financial records for the 3rd time, finding 3 additional discrepancies that he flagged in red ink and attached to the back of the gray file with a paper clip. He puts on his coat, picks up his keys, and heads toward a door that will never open for him again. The corridor outside the north wing is wood-paneled and long. The kind of long that makes footsteps echo. The kind that makes a person aware of their own breathing. Portraits line both walls, formal, still, watching, and the overhead light carries that particular palace quality of being bright without being warm. Tom Parker Bowles walks it at 8:33 a.m. with his hands in his coat pockets and his chin slightly raised. He has walked this corridor before, many times. He knows the 4th panel from the left has a small crack in the varnish. He knows the portrait of Edward VII tilts 2 degrees to the right and no one has corrected it in 40 years. He walks it like a man who belongs here. William is already waiting at the far end. He stands with his back straight and his hands at his sides and he watches Tom cover the full length of the corridor without moving a single muscle in his face. Tom slows 3 steps out. His chin drops half an inch. His hands come out of his pockets. William speaks before Tom reaches him. "You know why you're here. It is not a question." Tom opens his mouth and makes a sound that is not quite a word. His eyes move, just briefly, to the door of Suite 14 North, which is directly to William's left. The new lock is visible, polished, different from the one that was there yesterday. Tom sees it. William watches him see it. "I want you to understand something," William says. His voice does not rise. It does not waver. It carries the quality of something that has been held at an exact temperature for a very long time. This isn't personal. It is structural. And it is final. Tom finds his voice. "William. Prince William." The correction lands without force and without cruelty. It lands the way a fact lands. Simple. Immovable. Tom's jaw tightens. "This is my mother's home. Your mother lives here by right of marriage to the king," William says. "That right belongs to her. It has never extended to you. You were extended a courtesy. You treated a courtesy like a deed." Tom takes a step forward. His face is doing something complicated, a mixture of disbelief and the first raw edges of real fear. "You cannot do this. Do you understand what I can?" "I can," William says. "I have." He steps aside. Behind him, Reginald Okafor stands at a small table positioned against the wall. On the table sits the gray file open to page 1, and beside it the succession alteration already signed, already sealed. Reginald's expression carries zero emotion. He is present as a witness and as an institutional record, and every line of his posture communicates exactly that. Tom stares at the file. He recognizes the gray cover. Something moves through his face. Fast, there and gone. Something that looks, just for a second, like a man watching the floor open beneath him. 23 years, William says quietly. 23 years of watching this place get treated like your personal extension. The offices, the kitchens, the event spaces, the gate access, the procurement lines. He pauses. The recordings. Tom goes very still. There is a woman named Celestine Abera, William continues. You don't know her, but she knew my mother. And my mother knew this day was coming. He reaches into the file and withdraws a single folded page. Not the full letter, just one page, one paragraph, and holds it out. Tom does not take it. William sets it on the table beside the succession alteration. This isn't your home, Tom. It never was. He says it without heat, without triumph, with something that a close observer might recognize as grief. The specific grief of a man who has rehearsed a sentence for 20 years and finds, when he finally says it, that it brings him no satisfaction at all. Only the quiet recognition of something restored. Tom's hand moves to his coat pocket. His phone. He pulls it out. He looks at the screen. His palace-issued line shows a single message, sent from the communications office at 7:58 a.m. this morning. This number has been deactivated. Tom looks up. William is already walking away. Camilla finds out at 9:15 a.m. Not from William. Not from Reginald. Not from any official channel. She finds out because a member of her personal household staff, a steady, careful woman named Yvette Drummonds who has worked beside the Queen for 11 years, walks into her morning room at Clarence House, sets a cup of tea on the side table with both hands, and says, in a voice kept deliberately flat, "Ma'am, there's been a development at the North Wing." Camilla sets down the book she is holding. "Tom?" she says. Yvette answers with a look that is not a yes or a no. It is the specific expression of someone delivering news they were specifically instructed to deliver without editorial comment. Camilla is on her feet before Yvette finishes the sentence. What happens in the next 4 hours is not documented in any official palace record. What is known, what 3 separate palace staffers will later confirm in careful, cautious language, is that William meets with Camilla privately at 10 a.m. in the King's study, a room chosen by William specifically because of its institutional weight. The King himself is not present. His health does not permit the meeting. That absence speaks louder than anything that is said inside that room. William arrives first. He stands rather than sits. On the desk, the King's desk, the desk of the man Camilla loves and has built her second life alongside, William places 2 documents side by side, the succession alteration, and a second document that has never been discussed publicly, a framework prepared by the palace's legal counsel titled simply, Household Stability Protocol. The protocol is clear in its language. During any period of royal medical vulnerability, the palace household must contract, not expand. Non-blood, non-essential presences are to be quietly removed from operational proximity to crown assets. It is not punitive. It is protective. Of the King, of the institution, of the line that comes after. Camilla reads both documents standing up. She reads them slowly. She turns every page. She does not ask questions while she reads, and William does not offer commentary. The room holds a silence so complete that a palace aide named Marcus Acheampong, stationed just outside the study door, will later describe it as the quietest 12 minutes he has ever experienced in 19 years of palace service. When Camilla reaches the final page of the protocol, she stops. She looks at the succession alteration. She looks at William, really looks in the way a person looks when they are trying to find something they are not sure is there. William meets her eyes and holds them. He does not speak. He has said everything with the documents. He has structured this moment so that no single word needs to be said, because words can be argued with, words can be walked back, words can be misremembered in the retelling. Documents cannot. He is my son, Camilla says. Her voice is steady. That is the remarkable thing, it is absolutely steady. I know, William says. The room breathes. Camilla looks down at the succession alteration one more time. At the seal. At the signature. At the date, today's date, which is also, by complete coincidence, 11 days before the anniversary of Diana's birthday. She places both hands flat on the surface of the king's desk. And then, without another word, without a scene, without the outburst that the room seems to be bracing for, Camilla, Queen of England, straightens up, smooths the front of her jacket, and walks toward the door. She does not look back. Marcus Acheampong opens it for her from outside. He keeps his eyes forward. As she passes him, she pauses for just a half second. Not long enough to be a conversation, just long enough to be a moment, and then she continues down the corridor. William stands alone in the king's study. He looks at his father's desk, at the two documents sitting side by side on its surface, at the chair behind it. The chair his father sits in, the chair his father can no longer sit in as often as he used to, and something crosses William's face that no one is present to see. It is not victory. It is the expression of a man standing at the intersection of everything he has gained and everything that gaining it has cost him. He picks up the fountain pen, King George VI pen, dark green, gold nib, and makes one final notation on the protocol's signature line. The clock on the wall reads 10:47 a.m. In the corridor below, Tom Parker Bowles is packing a single box. And 3 floors up, in a room that no public record will ever fully describe, something is shifting in the architecture of the British monarchy. Quietly, irreversibly, the way the most permanent things always change. The box is cardboard. Standard. Brown. The kind a person uses when they did not plan to leave and could not bring themselves to ask for anything more dignified. Tom carries it with both hands through the East Service corridor. Not the main hall, not the route that passes the portraits, not the corridor he has walked 100 times with his chin raised and his hands in his pockets. The service corridor. That is the detail that palace staff will quietly note for years. A staffer named Jabari Osei holds the door at the east exit. He has worked this post for 6 years. He has opened this door for diplomats, for heads of state, for members of the extended royal household on some of the most significant mornings in recent royal history. He opens it now with the same composed expression he always carries, but his eyes, careful, recording. Take in the cardboard box and the set of Tom's jaw and the way Tom walks through that door without looking back, without pausing, without any of the ease he has always carried in this building. The door closes. The sound it makes is ordinary. That is the most devastating part. No ceremony. No confrontation in the main hall. No assembled staff, no formal reading of the succession alteration, no moment staged for history. Just a brown cardboard box and a service door and the sound of gravel under a departing set of footsteps. By 11 a.m., the North Wing has been formally redesignated. The booking system, scrubbed clean by Imani Osei, who returns to her office that morning to find a handwritten note of acknowledgement on her desk from William's private secretary, shows 0 active reservations. Every guest access code linked to non-blood, non-essential household members has been revoked. The budget lines flagged in the Chopard file have been frozen pending formal review by Kwame Asante's oversight team. The palace does not release a statement. There will be no press conference. No carefully worded announcement. The story will reach the public the way most palace stories reach the public, through fragments, through unnamed sources, through the careful reading of what is conspicuously absent rather than what is explicitly said. The Camillification of Kensington Palace, the quiet, incremental expansion of the Parker Bowles presence into the operational center of the royal household, is over. Not with a speech, not with a scandal. With a lock change and a signed document and a cardboard box. The crown does not perform its corrections. It executes them. Inside the palace, the morning continues with the specific normalcy of an institution that has been weathering extraordinary events for 1,000 years and has long since learned to absorb them without breaking stride. Kitchens run. Schedules turn. Staff move through corridors carrying the professional composure that is its own form of institutional memory. But in the East Corridor, near the service exit door, A young staffer named Aaliyah Mensa stops for a moment on her way between assignments. She has been at the palace for 8 months. She has no direct knowledge of the Gray file or the Chopard file or Celestine Abra's letter. She was not present for any of the events of the last 18 months. She simply notices that Suite 14 North, which has always had a light visible under its door during morning hours, is dark. She looks at it for a second. Then she keeps walking. In the afternoon, a small palace maintenance team enters the North Wing. They carry nothing dramatic: cleaning supplies, fresh linen, a small toolkit. One of them, a meticulous older woman named Loretta Jean Baptiste, pauses just inside Suite 14 North and looks around the room with the practiced eye of someone who can read a space the way other people read a face. The room has been used recently. The air still carries the faint memory of food and voices and the particular energy of people who felt comfortable somewhere they had no authority to feel comfortable. Loretta opens the window. Fresh air moves through the room. She begins her work without ceremony, and as she does, she reaches into her uniform pocket and places something on the windowsill. A small thing, private, not part of any official protocol. It is a photograph. Old, slightly faded at the edges. Diana, in this same wing, laughing at something out of frame. Loretta works around it all morning. At 4 p.m., a palace courier delivers a sealed envelope to Suite 14 North's main door. Inside is a single card bearing the official royal household emblem and a typed line that reads, "This space is hereby returned to designated crown use, effective immediately." Below the typed line, in handwriting that every person in that building would recognize, is a single initial, W. And outside the palace gates, in a car parked along the public road, a journalist named Deja Holloway sits with a telephoto lens trained on the North Wing's exterior. She has been there since 8 a.m. She has photographed the locksmith team's early morning arrival. She has photographed the East Service exit at the moment a man carrying a cardboard box walked through it. She has photographed the maintenance team entering at 2 p.m. She has not published a single image yet. She is waiting for one more. At 4:47 p.m., exactly 12 hours after Darius Calloway's locksmith team arrived in the dark, a light comes on in a room on the 3rd floor of the North Wing. A figure stands at the window, looking out over the palace gardens. Still, quiet, alone. Deja presses the shutter. She looks at the image on her screen. Then she picks up her phone and calls her editor. "I have the story," she says. The light stays on. That is the first thing. William does not pull the curtain. He does not step back from the window. He stands exactly where he is, looking out over gardens that were planted in arrangements his mother chose, tended now by hands that never knew her, still holding the shape she gave them 20 years after she left. The palace grounds at dusk carry a particular quality of stillness. The kind that only comes when the day's business is finished and the institution has returned to its baseline. That ancient, patient rhythm that has absorbed kings and crises and centuries and continued without interruption. William has stood at many windows in this palace. This one is different. He is 39 days away from his 44th birthday. He has been a prince his entire conscious life. He has been a husband, a father, a son managing grief in public, a future king preparing for a role that has been approaching him since before he could speak. He has been patient in ways that have cost him. He has been quiet in ways that have been mistaken for weakness. He is not weak. What happened today was not the act of an angry man. It was not the act of a man settling a score, or protecting a grudge, or performing a loyalty to a mother who is no longer here to receive it. It was the act of an institution clarifying its own boundaries through the person it has designated to enforce them. But institutions are made of people, and people carry things that no document fully captures. A senior aide named Tobias Asamoah finds William at the window at 5:12 p.m. He enters without knocking, one of only 4 people in the world permitted to do so, and stands quietly at the edge of the room, close enough to be present, far enough to leave the silence intact. After a moment, William speaks without turning around. "Did she say anything?" "After." Tobias knows who he means. "No," Tobias says. "She went directly to her afternoon engagement." Composed. On schedule. William nods once. And Tom? His representatives have made 2 calls to the communications office, both directed to the standard external protocol line. No response issued yet. William is quiet for a moment. Don't issue one, he says. Tobias makes a note. The room settles back into stillness, and William looks out at the gardens. And the question that no legal framework and no gray file and no signed document with a royal seal can answer is the one that lives in the space between what is done and what it costs to do it. Was this justice? Was it grief wearing the clothes of governance? Was it both? Diana's letter sits on the desk behind him. Not the copy in the file, the original. For pages. Autumn 1996. Celestine Abra carried it for 23 years and handed it to William without asking for anything in return, and the paragraph on the 3rd page that predicted this moment, that described in Diana's own measured handwriting, the exact shape of what would one day need to be undone, does not read like a warning anymore. It reads like permission. William turns from the window. The room holds him. The desk holds the letter. The pen that signed the succession alteration lies capped beside the file, and the gardens hold their shape below, and somewhere inside this building Camilla is moving through her evening with the composed silence of a woman who chose the institution over her son and will carry that choice for the rest of her life. The crown is not a trophy for the ambitious. It is a burden for the dutiful. William sits down at the desk. His mother's desk, in his mother's chair, in the study that now carries both of their presences in the way that spaces carry the people who have grieved inside them. He opens a fresh sheet of paper. He picks up the pen. He begins to write. Not a document. Not a legal order. Not a formal communication to any office or institution or public record. A letter. Private. Handwritten. Beginning with a word he has spoken only in his most guarded moments, in rooms empty of everyone but himself. The first word is Mum. He writes through the evening. The light stays on. The gardens hold their shape below. The palace breathes around him with its 1,000-year patience, and somewhere in the east corridor the door that Tom Parker Bowles walked through this morning has already been reassigned to a new access log and a new clearance code and a new chapter in an institution that does not stop moving for any single person. Not even the ones who deserved to stop it. Not even the ones we loved. William writes until the page is full. Then he folds it, carefully, along lines that mirror, without his planning it, the exact fold of the letter Celestine kept for 23 years. He does not address the envelope. He sets it on the desk where his mother used to write, and he leaves it there. The light stays on all night. A new nameplate arrives at the North Wing service entrance at 7 a.m. the following morning, carried by a courier who hands it to Jabari Osei without comment. Jabari holds it for a moment, reads the name engraved on its surface. A name belonging to no current royal, but to a title that will pass to a specific person on a specific future day, and carries it inside without ceremony. He places it against the wall beside Suite 14 North's door, waiting to be mounted. The palace wakes up around it, and at a window 3 floors above the east garden, a light that burned through the entire night finally goes out. Not because the work is finished, but because the man who lit it has finally, after 20 years, allowed himself to rest. The Shadow King has taken his place. The question now, the one that will follow this story into every conversation, every comment, every quiet moment of reflection, is not whether William was right. The question is what it means that it took this long. If you believe William was protecting something sacred when he made that decision, drop the word legacy in the comments right now. If you think the cost, to Camilla, to the family, to the relationships that will never recover, was too high, type overreach and tell us why. This story is bigger than one palace decision. It is about every person who has ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting what matters most. Between silence and action. Between the family you were handed and the legacy you were born to carry. If the story moved you, if it made you think, if it made you feel, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you are not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, because the stories coming to this channel are the kind that do not let you look away. Every week, we go deeper, we go further, and we bring you the stories behind the stories. The ones the official record leaves out. You found this one. Do not miss the next.